Hey everybody, I am in a truly special car that is probably one of the most over-engineered and least appreciated cars of the last 10 years. We just bought it. It's fully electric, it's extremely quiet, it is surprisingly quick. It's got heated seats, automatic climate control, it's got a full digital cluster. It's just 6 years old and we bought it for under $15,000. But if I put this car in the description or the headline or the thumbnail, nobody would click on it because it's very misunderstood. Let's take a look. Now yes, the car I'm referring to is our new to us BMW i3, but please don't click out of this video because the i3 is an extremely innovative, extremely cool car that can be had for pennies on the dollar compared to what they were when they were new. The car behind me was probably $45,000, $50,000 back in 2014. We bought it for $12,500.
Here's a question. What are you supposed to do when you've got a cool old truck like Project Gunsmoke with no stereo in it? Well, rather than buy a cheesy aftermarket head unit, you could get yourself a Cove Commuter 2 Split. I've been enjoying this Bluetooth speaker for a while now, and it sounds surprisingly rich and deep with its tones. It definitely sounds better than the factory stereo in this truck ever did. Take a listen. And when paired to my phone, it allows me to call hands-free with its built-in mic. Now check this out. Normally, this speaker gives you 360-degree surround sound, but when you split it into two parts, you get two speakers for a true stereo sound experience, which means you're getting two speakers for just over $200. The water-resistant Cove Commuter will last up to 7 hours on a single charge, which means there's no need to drain your vehicle's battery at a campsite or at a tailgate. So if you're tired of muddy audio in your old truck or car, or you just want to upgrade your desktop or backyard sound system, click on the link in the description below and get over 64% off this bad boy by using the code FLT64.
All right, so just over 12 grand for a car that originally was $45,000. There must be something majorly wrong with it, right? No, actually everything works. Well, it probably is a salvage title, right? No, clean Colorado title. Well, it's probably got some crazy high mileage. This car, this 2014 i3, has just over 21,000 miles. It still has its original battery warranty, which is still good for another 2 years and 70,000 miles, and it still has a CPO warranty on it all the way up through March of 21. This is a real car, running and driving, in really nice shape, well cared for, with under 22,000 miles for just over 12 grand. And here's some of the crazy things you get. The i3 debuted for the 2014 model year, and it is a pretty brilliant piece of technology. There are two versions. Now, there's a full electric version, and that has a big battery, charge it up completely, and you can drive anywhere between 81 and like 150 miles, depending on the year. And of course, when the battery dies, you charge it back up again. This one is a little special. This is what they call an i3 Rex, and the Rex stands for range extender. Now, this is still a fully electric car, so charge it up and I can go 72 miles on a full charge. However, when the battery reaches 6% charge, it doesn't just simply die, it kicks on a 2-cylinder gasoline engine. And when that gasoline engine kicks on, it supplies energy for the electric motor, so we can go another 78 miles. Now, it's not a plug-in hybrid. That gasoline engine never makes any physical connection with the drive wheels. It simply acts as a generator, and it will propel me along at, pretty normal speeds until I can find a charge port, and then I plug it back in, and I can go another 72 miles on a charge, and that little gasoline engine is just there as a backup in case the battery gets too low and I need to make it home or to a charger or even to a gas station if I'm on a road trip. One of the reasons that the i3 is so underappreciated is that just about everything is bespoke to this model. You see, when BMW designed a new model, be it a 3 Series or a 5 Series or a 7 Series, There's got to be some part sharing for it to make financial sense. So things like gear selectors, keys, even steering wheels are probably pretty similar between the models, but not on the funny little i3. Even the key is different. BMWs from 2014 are kind of this thicker, blocky, rectangular key. The i3 has this super thin pancake key, which looks like nothing else in the automotive industry. It's pretty large, you know, left, right, and up and down, but super, super narrow. And then we get to the door handles, which are, they're mounted backwards if you ask me. So the door opens like a normal door here in the front, but the door handle doesn't operate in the standard direction. In fact, it hinges entirely backwards. How weird is that? The i3 is a four-door vehicle. So where are the rear doors? Where are the rear door handles? Well, they're not visible on the outside. In fact, the i3 uses clamshell doors, and there's a door handle here on the B pillar, which is actually another door. Why they decided to make it into a clamshell design, I will never fully understand, but that's what they did. Now let's talk about the best part of the i3, and that's the way it drives. Now, yes, it does look pretty dorky. It's kind of like me, right? I'm not much of a looker, but unlike me, it's also surprisingly great to spend time with. So, it's really quiet, because it's a full electric car. I've got 50 some miles of charge right now, and I can just drive it along like a regular full electric, and it's actually really quick. So 0 to 30, according to BMW, is quicker in the i3 than an E92 V8 powered M3. It makes only 170 horsepower, but when you punch it, of course, you got that instant blast of torque because it's an electric car. Now you can see with both doors open, there's really just a massive hole to get in and out of the cockpit of the i3, but that presents some issues because there's no traditional pillar here for structural support. And BMW solved this in a very space-aged fashion. You see, the whole i3 monocoque is made out of a reinforced carbon fiber plastic. You can see it here down on the sill. It's exposed. This was an extremely strong and rigid solution to building a vehicle. It's also very lightweight, but stupid expensive to engineer and develop. And once you finally get past the weird carbon fiberness and doors, you get to the floor, which is entirely flat. There's no central hump here in the BMW i3. And that's because the i3 was developed as a ground up to be an electric car. This wasn't some converted gas car with the need for a central tunnel. So BMW just took advantage of that by giving you basically a bowling alley here down the center of the vehicle. And then you get to the steering wheel, and BMW probably should have saved some money and just used the steering wheel out of the 3 Series or the 5 Series, but they didn't. They made this specific steering wheel, which is this crazy 2-spoke design, big cutouts in both the top and the bottom, and then you've got this bizarre blue ring that extends around the entire circumference. And then you've got this weird extrusion on the side of the steering column. This is actually your drive select. So you've got a button here for start stop. Push the button, the car whirs into life, but to actually select the gear, you put your foot on the brake, and then you toggle this crazy lever back and forward to select reverse, neutral, or drive. And then for park, they put a button up here on the top of the weird extrusion. Personally, I think they should have put the park on the end of the stock, but, you know, they decided to put it up here. The overall interior design is extremely airy. It's also very modern. Even 6 years after this car was made, pretty much nothing else on the market looks like this. Take a look at the dashboard. It's made out of recycled materials, but the dash itself is enormous. I'm 6'1", and I can't even reach the very end of the dashboard. That's how long it is. Plus, take a look at this woven material here. Very organic, almost looks unfinished to some eyes, but I like to say a little bit industrial chic. Now, featured prominently in the center of the dash is the floating infotainment screen. You can see here, I can pass my hand entirely underneath it. The screen itself is pretty small. It's just 6.5 inches, although the bezel is massive to kind of give that impression when it's off. of a larger infotainment. Now, there was a larger screen available, a 10-inch screen. This is more of an entry-level i3, so you get the smaller screen. It's an iDrive system, not particularly easy to use. It's not touchscreen, but you kind of get used to the rotary shifter mounted down between your legs. Now let's talk about reliability, because that is of course a big concern when buying a used BMW, especially one that's over 5-6 years old. The i3 is a very reliable car. Electric cars in general just don't have a lot to go wrong. They only have a few moving components in the whole drivetrain, and the battery system in this BMW is super well engineered, so you don't see a lot of the degradation issues that you get with the Leafs. It also has an 8-year, 100,000-mile battery warranty, so if something fails with the battery system, I can get that replaced under warranty. And apart from that, it's got a Taiwanese engine, which is super well engineered, and this thing should last tens of thousands of miles without much difficulty whatsoever. BMW has done something pretty clever with the digital instrument cluster. They've got a big bezel here, so it makes you think the screen will extend all the way to the edge of the black, but in fact, it's just this really small area here in the center. It's probably 1.5 inches tall, maybe 4 inches long, the screen itself, but it tells you everything you need to know, like drive readiness, speed, and efficiency. Unlike Teslas that have a fully digital center cluster, the i3 still utilizes some physical control. So we have presets up here for the radio. Thank you, BMW, for including that, as well as my favorite feature in the whole world, a volume knob. But of course, you've got buttons here for your heated seats. You've got automatic climate control, which appears in the center knob here. That's pretty cool. And then of course you have buttons for the fan in the middle here as well. So it's nice having some physical controls where I can just push 5 and then listen to my radio station assigned to number 5 without having to go and futz through a big infotainment screen. Now the glove box in the i3 doesn't extend down, it actually opens upward. You push in this key slot here, and it pops open. Fairly large glove box, big enough for your papers and your owner's manual, but funny enough, it is lockable. But to lock and unlock the glove box, you have to extract the key from the already thin key. It's like what's that little dude, Thin Stanley or whatever? Check that out. And then insert that there, and I can lock it, so now you can't get into your glove box. That's pretty funky. In the center console here, you can see a space for a beverage. You got, well, one cup holder. Not very Americanized if you ask me, but in front of that, you've got these funny little holes. That's where an ashtray would attach if you got the optional ashtray. Behind the central cup holder, you've got your drive select for comfort and eco modes. This is, of course, your BMW iDrive knob. But look at this, they've included this little pad here for resting your hand while you're adjusting the settings in the iDrive. Behind that, you've got a little center console with this little tiny cubby, but underneath that, a much larger storage bin with a USB port, an aux port, and a 12 volt. The backseat of the i3 is probably the biggest surprise of the car because it's really usable. Now, funny enough, the door opens, but I can also pivot the front seat forward using this little handle on the back of the headrest. But part of the reason the back seat is so good is look how thin the front seats are. They are really narrow, but when you're back here, this is my kind of riding position at 6'1". I've got enough knee room, and I even have enough headroom because they put this big scallop in the top of the ceiling. Now, some funny things about the rear doors in the i3. You can't actually roll down the rear window, but that's not such a bad thing because the rear window is huge. It's really tall, and take a look at the overall door design. It's extremely over-designed, very geometric with its patterns. Nice big grab handle for opening and closing the door, and I do like the little rear armrest down here. Just a little bit of added comfort. The i3 is a hatchback, and it's got a surprisingly usable trunk. The whole rear of the vehicle opens, and you can see quite a lot of room back here. This i3 even came with something called a juice box, which is a smart grid EV charging station that was included for $12,500. Haven't even cleaned this car out because we just picked it up, but you know, pretty good trunk for the size of the vehicle. And I do like the WeatherTech floor mats. Not sponsored, just, you know, very useful for having dogs and stuff here in Colorado. You do notice something kind of interesting in the back of the i3. When you open the rear hatch, it's unlocked, the tail lights actually lift up with the rear hatch. Now, this is a problem in the US because we have laws that say your turn signals and stuff can't be positioned on a moving panel. So how does BMW get around that? Well, you'll notice with the hazards on, they actually appear up here in the rear main beams. However, when the trunk's open, the hazards move down here to this fixed panel on the bumper. Now the i3 has a tiny 2-cylinder engine, so naturally it would have a tiny tailpipe. Let's talk about that little generator that lives in the back of the i3. It is just 647 cc's, it's a 2-cylinder motorcycle engine, and it develops 34 raging horsepower. Of course, BMW does make some legendary 2-cylinder boxer motorcycle engines, but the engine in this i3 is actually a Taiwanese engine made by a company called Kimco. It's a very reliable little unit. They use it in a BMW scooter, actually. And even though 34 horsepower doesn't sound like a lot, that little range extender does generate enough electricity to allow you to cruise down the road. It will even allow you to cruise at highway speeds. Just don't think you're going to be doing 140 on the Autobahn, because up super steep hills it might struggle to maintain 75 miles per hour. Once again, it doesn't have any connection to the wheels. It is simply like firing up a Honda generator on the back of like our electric smart car, except this one is much more, well, sophisticated, and it's self-sufficient, so it actually starts up every now and then just to make sure that it's ready to go in case that you need it. So you don't have to worry about having to cycle it on and off. It does it automatically occasionally just to make sure that the fluids are ready to go and that, it won't fail to start. Now the i3 does have 2 flaps on the side of the vehicle. The one in the rear should be the fuel door, right? But it's not. It is actually the location for the J1772 charging point. This is where you charge the high voltage battery. Now this just has AC charging, but they were available and still are available with DC fast charging as well. That will give you about 80% charge in 30 minutes on the proper charger. Now the front port, this is actually where you fill it up with gas. So that's where the gas goes on an i3. There is a button here on the i3 for a hood, but it's not a hood, it's a front trunk. Simply push and hold the button, and now we can access the front storage area in the i3, which is granted very small. It's probably too small for even a carry-on, but it is big enough for essentials like umbrellas, rags. This one has a charger in the front of it, and you can also see your spare tire inflation kit. The i3 does have some hilarious looking wheels and tires. First of all, the wheels are pretty enormous, 19-inch wheels in this kind of funky aero design. But the tires are the big talking point here, because they are 155/70 R19s. They're basically glorified fat bike tires, if you know what I mean. But believe it or not, you can get real tires for these. This car came equipped with brand new snow tires, so we're gonna have to try this thing in the snow. But then of course next summer, we're gonna have to go out and buy a set of all seasons or summers so these don't melt. But I've heard these are very expensive tires because, well, this is pretty much the only car that uses this tire size for efficiency, so that you can go further on one tank of electricity. Now kind of the overall theme of the i3 is this electric blue that denotes it's an electrified vehicle. It's around every BMW logo, including on the steering wheel and the wheels, and it also surrounds the iconic kidney grills here. Now the exterior design of the i3 is probably the worst part, if we're being honest. It's something you either love or really hate, and I fear most people really don't like it. It's far too narrow and far too tall. The tires are too narrow as well, so it looks kind of dorky and dinky. Then you get the proportions, which are just misaligned. I mean, it's kind of the mobility pod of the future that nobody really wanted. If you can get past kind of the weird exterior design, the i3 is a truly brilliant car. There are hundreds of millions of dollars that went into designing and engineering this vehicle, and it just shows not only the quality of the materials, but the driving experience, the efficiency, and the fact that even though this car is 6 years old, it still has held up really well even in 2020, both from a interior design and actually technological standpoint. Now let me know what you think in the comment section below. We're going to hold on to this i3 for quite some time, see what it's like to live with on a day-to-day basis, and see if it really is as good as the dream promises it is, because for $12,500 you really would have a hard time finding a better engineered, more comfortable, and more interesting vehicle. Well, as always, this is Tommy with the Fastlane Car. Check out tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.